Good evening, everyone. Time is 6:30 p.m. and I'm calling to order the December 19th, 2023 Borough Council Work Session. Item number 1 is our call to order. Item 2 will be our Pledge of Allegiance. Can I please have that led by Mr. McGinnis? Okay. Item 3 is, actually, I meant to mention under our call to order, I feel the room has a lot of people here for item number 20. So I'm going to, after we're done with our interviews, item 7, I'm going to push up item 20 and to that in between 7 and 8 tonight. So, okay. And also any comments tonight, limit to 3 minutes, please. Okay. Item 3 is a comments, suggestions, petitions by residents and attendants regarding items that are not on the agenda. Anybody has something, come on up to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, which is the mayor's nomination for approval by Borough Council of candidate for the position of Chief of Police.
Thank you, President. So as many of you know, Chief James Moorhead is retiring effective January 12th. And it was important to get a nomination into the Borough Council as expeditiously as possible. I interviewed 3 wonderful candidates from internally from the police department, and at the end of the day, and assisted by a 6-person committee of different people in the borough, we have selected Lieutenant Joshua Lee as our candidate. And I'd like to share with you some of his accomplishments. Lieutenant Joshua Lee, Josh as everyone calls him, was hired by the Westchester Police Department in January of 2000. He is a graduate of the University of Delaware, the Delaware County Community College Police Academy, and the FBI National Academy. Josh was promoted to corporal in 2005, sergeant 2017, and lieutenant in 2020. He has served on several different patrol functions, on bicycle patrol, as a field training officer for new recruits, and as a supervisor in the community resource unit. For the past 4 years, he has served as an administrative liaison to the Westchester Regional Emergency Response Team. He has been a volunteer firefighter for over 10 years, and he currently volunteers as a mentor at the Charles Melton Community Center and is a member of the board of directors of the Chester County Crime Victim Center. So Lieutenant Joshua Lee is married and the father of 2 beautiful children, and he is an exemplary candidate for the new chief of police. I thank you for listening to me. I just wanted you to all, that's the short version. I have the extended version, the longer cut if you're interested. And I would ask for your unanimous vote for him. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Any comment on this? Okay. Are we good to put this on consent for tomorrow?
Yes.
All right, great. Well, congratulations to Lieutenant Lee, soon to be Chief Lee. I think you're here in the back there somewhere. Yeah. We're sad to see Chief Moorhead go, but I'm really looking forward to what you're able to accomplish. So congrats. All right. So that'll go under consent for tomorrow night. We're going to move on to item 5, which is an approval of an employment agreement with the Westchester Borough Manager. This is something we had discussed in executive session, and we've come up with an agreement. Any further comment on it? Okay. All right. Any public comment? Okay, we good. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I
Mr.
just
Metrick.
want to clarify that the agreement is with me, Sean Metrick, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Yeah, sorry. I didn't. that was somewhat implied, but you're right. Yes, with Mr. Metric as the borough manager. Okay, Mr. Cook.
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. Was the resolution made at the executive session, and what was it?
There was no resolution made at the executive session. We took a vote to approve. Well, not to approve, but we voted to agree on the terms of the agreement. And now we are ratifying that publicly. Okay. We good to put this on consent for tomorrow night?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So item 5 will undergo consent. Item 6 is a presentation of donated painting to the Westchester Borough Public Works Department by a resident, Phil Hill. Mr. Hill.
Hi, everybody, and Merry Christmas. I'm not wearing this hat because I'm Santa Claus, but because I'm going to make a gift tonight and to recognize the work that the Department of Public Works collection crews does every week, regardless of weather. Usually it's early in the morning before many of us have had our first cup of coffee, so we don't see them. And I had this idea for a while. I really wanted to do a painting, but the problem I had was trying to catch these guys because they come up around so early and they're quick. So I would sometimes have to chase them down the road or the block in my bathrobe in order to get a picture. And every now and then I'd say, can you take a pose? And they would line up behind the truck as, you know, like for a formal pose. And I would say, no, I want some action. And so over the course of the summer, as I was sitting having my breakfast, I would hear the truck as it came down the block. I would grab my cell phone and run out and see if I could catch them. And made friends with a lot of these guys. They're regular people. I did this painting, and about 2 weeks ago, I went to Lacey Street and I gave each one of them a copy of the painting, which I had framed exactly as the original. And you've never seen such gratitude in your life. It was heartwarming. These men are extraordinary. So this is the painting. And it's an oil painting. This is a photo of it. This guy's. And I'm very pleased to present it. I read a little bit of the history of the garbage collection in the borough. I don't know how many people were aware that we had garbage collection that started in 1885. And there were all kinds of funny things that happened. And the borough council was right in the middle of a lot of it. One of the things that really amused me was around 1900, a lot of towns were building incinerators to burn the garbage. Because you collect it, but what do you do with it? And Westchester was growing, and this problem became quite acute. So there was a proposal to build an incinerator, which the borough turned down in favor of their own plan, which was cheaper, and that was to pay the farmers to collect the garbage so they could feed them to the pigs. And that proved to be a pretty effective way of getting rid of a lot of garbage for a number of years until the state required that the garbage be boiled before it was fed to the livestock, and that killed that. So over the years, there's been a lot of debate about whether we should have an incinerator or not. We don't have one, and I guess we're getting along quite well because I don't see it on the agenda tonight. So with that, I just want to read what I wrote a little dedication.
Sure.
And it says, our trash and recyclable collection crews serve a noble profession that keeps our community safe from disease and free from the scourge of litter. This painting, Street Collection Heroes by Philip Hill, donated by Francis and Philip Hill at Dean Street, to the Borough of Westchester Public Works Department, an appreciation of the dedicated service of our trash and recyclable collection crews. Presented to Don Edwards, Director of Public Works, on December 19, 2023. Was Don here?
Yeah, I saw him somewhere. There's right behind you. Oh, come on. Last the meeting. Good. Yeah, go ahead, Don. Yeah.
Just very briefly, Mr. Hill, on behalf of the borough, including its Public Works Department, thank you for this beautiful artwork. Collecting solid waste and recycling is a difficult job, and we appreciate the recognition.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Mr. Hill. We really appreciate it. Really sweet gesture, and absolutely the workers who collect our waste are unsung heroes. You don't hear about them much, but if you ever see them out there and you get to talk to them like Mr. Hill did, just always say thank you to those workers. It's an incredible job they do. Thanks so much, Mr. Hill. Appreciate it. Okay, we're moving on to item 7, which is so we have a couple interviews for our boards and commissions / committees. We had a couple people drop off. I'll skip them when we get to it. So first we have for our Civil Service Commission, Kathy Wilson. And if you're here, Kathy, come on up, and I'll ask everybody the same thing. Just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, why you want to serve, and then if there's any questions from the council, ask anything.
I've lived in the borough since 1983, and I appreciate the service and the exemplary service that the police department provides to us. And I also have a belief in public service. As a result of that, I've served on the boards of the Chester County Hospital and Health System and the Westchester Public Library. So I was looking for another reason to serve. I'm currently a retired attorney. In other words, I'm not practicing, although my license is still active. I have previous knowledge of the demands on the police department because I was married for 8 years to a patrolman in Tredyffrin. So I am currently an alternate to the Civil Service Commission, and I was appointed by this board and sworn in by Mayor DeBaptiste in October. Currently, there is a vacancy coming up because of the decision by one of the members, Tony Polito, I believe, has served for 34 years to retire. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
As alternate, have you had to actually take any action, or were you never called upon as an alternate?
I'm sorry.
Like as an alternate, have you had to actually?
There have been 2 meetings which I've attended. I attended both the meetings which have occurred since that I was appointed, and I also went to just watch part of the testing for the current process for the latest batch of applicants. So I went to see the written test, and then I watched part of the physical test.
Great. Questions from the dais? Anybody here? Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your willingness to serve. And I'll say the same for everybody here that we're not making any decisions tonight. Tomorrow night we'll make the decisions. You're free to watch the rest of the meeting, but don't feel obligated. All right. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. We'll move on next to Heath Hederick, if I'm saying that correctly, and this is also for the Civil Service Commission. Heath, are you here? Is it Heath? Hi, come on. And the same thing, tell us a little bit about yourself, why you'd like to serve.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Heath Hederick. Do a lot of extensive work in the private sector of security, presently a security specialist at Vanguard. Been there for 5 years in my present role. Before that, I was with Allied Universal. I was an account manager, oversaw personnel hiring decisions of over 160 officers at my time. Many of them moved on into law enforcement. Some were ex-law enforcement. Some were more concierge. In the security world, we have so many different roles to fill. Going from the private sector, I feel adding something to public service. My mother for years with the Crime Victims Center of Chester County. My grandfather's a state trooper for over 30 years. So I have a real good feel for that. Living in the borough for over 15 years, also working locally at one of the bar establishments down at Jake's. I've been there for over 15 years as well. Had a lot of interaction with local PD here in Westchester. Always had a great time, always very professional. Looking to continue that with them. Many other law enforcement agencies I've worked with in my time with Allied Universal, Vanguard. Also done extensive training on counter surveillance, tactical measures, things to that effect. So a lot of things that we can, use here in the borough, and I think it'd be a valuable addition.
Great, thank you. Questions for Mr. Hederick? Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much for your willingness to serve. And once again, we'll make the decision tomorrow night. Thanks. Yep. Okay. Moving on, and this is for civil service or human relations, which is nice. A little options there. So this is Peggy Taylor. Peggy, are you here? Hey, Peggy. Same thing. Come on up. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Why you'd like to serve. Yeah.
Thanks for considering me and having me tonight. I'm new to the borough. I've been here about 2.5 years. I moved to Pennsylvania about 9 years or 8 years ago, and I work for a company headquartered in Exton, Pennsylvania, called West Pharmaceutical Services. Actually, my boss lives about 4 blocks away from me. I have about a little over 20 years of experience in human resources. I have my master's in human relations and labor relations. And my kids are just, at that 16 to 20-year-old age where they don't really need me much anymore. And so I'm looking to shift my focus into giving back to the community. This is a great community, and I'm thrilled to live here and offer my services in however I can contribute. So I have a lot of experience in recruiting, selection and assessment, investigations. I'm the leader for the human resources piece of West Pharmaceutical that runs about 8,000 employees across 25 production facilities, manufacturing facilities, and all around the world. So does anybody have any questions today?
Anybody have any questions? So you'd be willing to serve if you weren't chosen for one, you'd be willing to serve on either human relations or civil
Yeah,
service?
anywhere I can offer my
Okay.
experience, I'd be happy to serve.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And as I said, we'll make the decision tomorrow night.
Great, thanks.
All right. For our hard board, Historical Architectural Review Board, we have Matt Hazley, who is just as a note, a non-resident, but that's okay. Mr. Hazley, right here, Mr. Hazley. How are you? Same thing. Tell us a little bit about yourself, why you'd like to serve.
Yep. Thanks for having me up tonight. My name is Matthew Hazley. I'm a longtime resident of the area, born and raised in Westchester, went to the local schools. I'm a contractor builder. We do residential construction. And over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with many architects and work on lots of homes in the borough. And it's been a great honor to be able to pull houses together, pull them apart, and leave them better than when we got there. So I like the opportunity to serve and give back to the community and offer my experience in building homes and taking care and making sure they get put back together the right way. And we try to build everything for the next 100 years. So that's our thought process.
Great. Has anything you've ever been a part of in terms of construction been in the Harb district? Have you had to go through the board before? So you've
We've
been
done
through it?
lots of projects related to Harb. Going through the interview process. We did a nice side porch over here for Rose Stancato.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been great.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Hazley? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yep. Okay. Moving on to Dan Ritchie, who is willing to serve on either our Harb board or our tree commission, which is nice. I always like the options there. Thank you. Mr. Ritchie, tell us a little bit about yourself. Yeah.
Hi, nice to meet everybody. About myself, I moved recently to the borough right before COVID hit with my wife and 2 young kids. I'm a practicing architect. I've owned my own practice since 2013. I don't have any work here in the borough. Most of my work is still in Miami, Florida, even though I live here. But I thought, what better way to give back to my community and kind of integrate more than to be a part of being on that other side of the desk, aside from what I'm used to, is always giving the presentations to the historic boards and the commissions.
So kind of a similar question. I know you said you didn't do any work in the borough, but have you had to deal with a Harb board in another municipality? And then you said Miami?
Within Miami, but always on this side of the desk. So I've never been on the other side of the dais, having to give the critiques and, reading through and digesting the code and applying it to the applicants. But from the other side, a lot of work over the decade.
Understood. Cool. Any questions for Mr. Ritchie? No?
Can I just ask, tree commission, what's your expertise there?
I can only speak as an architect. We kind of integrate the landscaping component, and I kind of take that to heart. And to be honest, I met Jeff Bytel at Marshall Square Park things Jeff was really easy to get along with, and he suggested, hey, there's an opening on the tree commission. Why don't you join? We had a lot of conversations about protecting trees, protecting our canopy, protecting the character of the borough. So that one thing led to another, and that's why.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, thanks so much for willingness to serve, and like I said, we'll make a decision tomorrow night as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, yeah. Okay, John Taylor and Ann Skillman both have dropped their names out, so we'll skip them. So we'll move on down to Bruce Glennon, who's also a non-resident. He's willing to serve on either our historical commission or our harbor board. Mr. Glennon. Hi, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Bruce Glennon. I'm not a borough resident. I'm not a fan of living in big cities. I had to retire recently due to a disability, and I'm looking to be in service. I volunteer for a local fire company. I'm a former realtor, and I have my own real estate investment company where I own several rental properties and flipped a lot of houses. I've conducted transactions of real estate in the borough of Westchester. And I'm familiar with knob and tube wiring, fortunately or unfortunately. So I live out by the Four Dogs Tavern. And the reason that I live there is because every day, wherever I go, I drive by animals, red barns, just historic, covered bridges, just beautiful, beautiful history. And I'm a huge history buff. I'm a member of the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War. I'm also a member of the Sons of the American Revolution. I graduated from Conestoga High School, so I grew up around here. And I'm just looking to be in service. So, any questions or?
What middle school did you go to?
I'm sorry?
What middle school?
Middle school is when invented.
Oh,
I went to Valley Forge Junior High School.
Valley Forge. Okay, I
And
teach
went
TE middle school. That's why
I went to New Eagle Elementary.
Any questions for Mr. Glennon? Any questions? Okay. So I really appreciate you being willing to serve either one or the other. So opens up our options. Hopefully we can get a spot for you. Thank you so much. Yep. All right. Moving on to Chris. I'm going to say it's Knepp, if I got that right. It's a non-resident for our sustainability committee. Hi. I got it right, Knepp? Okay, great. Come on down, Mr. Knepp, and tell us a little bit about yourself. Thanks.
Well, unlike the other candidates that rattled off all of their credentials that make them very qualified for their positions, nothing in my resume will say anything about sustainability. Nothing in my background, nothing in my education. So if, I don't have any kind of background, any education, what brings me here? Well, I would say it's my passion. Recently, I found a passion in woodworking and wood turning. That passion then led me to the Wharton Esherick Museum, where I volunteer as a docent. And from there, I've learned, I've met some very interesting people. I've learned a lot of things. I've learned something called biophilic design in architecture. Architecture that's meant to not only represent, I guess, something beautiful, but also something that means something physiologically and also psychologically, mental health, mental well-being. And it all works into sustainability. And the last part of this is last month, I was recently minted a new grandfather. So I have a new grandson, and these things have just started to play in my mind that I need to do a better job. I need to take my part, my action to help with sustainability when and where I can. And I think that my background in software development actually helps with that. I've learned to work with a diverse group of people. I've learned that you have to negotiate. Not everybody's going to get everything that they want, but let's just make sure that everybody walks away with something that they can really use. And I think that that's what I can add to the board.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I think those are noble reasons. I appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Knapp? Okay, well, thank you very much. And as I said, we'll make a decision tomorrow night. John Nolan for our tree commission. Mr. Nolan, are you here? Hi. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Good. My name's John Nolan, and I recently retired as Assistant Superintendent of a school district, Unionville, and have some time on my hand, though I am quite busy with different projects and interim positions. My wife and I and our kids have lived here our kids don't live here right now, but for about 24 years. We moved into the borough about 10 years ago, and we love the borough. And we love the trees. We love just the whole area, the walkability, all of that. And now that I have some time on my hands, I really would like to give back. Interestingly enough, I did start my career as a forester way back when, and was, really loved it. But like many changes in our lives, ultimately decided to become a teacher and moved on to be a principal. And again, I mentioned assistant superintendent. So I have a lot of experience working with people, with boards and diverse people, kids, parents, all of that sort of thing was wonderful. And then I do have some knowledge in forestry. I wasn't an urban forester, and I worked in the West Coast in Oregon. And so, a lot of evergreens out there. It's a little bit different, but certainly my love of trees and forestry has been with me my whole life. My wife and I love the outdoors. We're avid kayakers and hikers and get out as much as we can. And I really want to do what I can to help the Tree Commission to meet its goals. I've been to several meetings and would be very excited to partner with the Tree Commission and the community to see what help I could give. So that's it. Any questions, sir?
Great. Thanks. Any questions for Mr. Nolan? No? Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. All right. And then I think our last applicant, yes, Jan, I'm going to say Yeomans, and maybe I have that right, for our Westchester Library Board. Oh, I got it. Yeah. Thanks. Hi, Ms. Yeomans.
Hello. I guess where to begin? I have so much history because I've been on this earth for so many years. But basically, I've lived in Chester County for about 2.5 years now. And because I've just gone off a board that took a tremendous amount of my time, I have a little bit of time. And as I looked around, I said, you know what? There's no place I'd rather live, and I'd like to get involved and learn more about the community. So when this opportunity became available, I thought, well, there must surely be something I can add. And as I spoke with Shannon McDonald, she said, well, we don't really have a lot of finance people on the board. And I said, oh, well, that's my life. That's my world. Maybe I can help you out here. I don't know. But by way of background, I worked for 29 plus years at a large multinational corporation where I was the treasurer. So I owned the global balance sheet for that and all the employee investments and so on and so on. And after I retired, I started all of a sudden finding myself on lots of boards, and it's been great. I've done nonprofits. I've done some public boards as well. And as I say, now I find myself with time and still some energy. And when this opportunity came up, I just threw my hat in the ring and said, I'd really love to do this.
It's really great. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Yeomans? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. And thank you everybody who interviewed tonight. As I said, we'll make some decisions tomorrow night. And I hope we can get a spot for most of you, if not all of you. I'm not sure 100% on that, but feel free to stay for the rest of the meeting, but don't feel obligated. So thank you. Okay, we're going to move on. And as I said, I bumped up item number 20. So we're going to skip ahead to item 20, which is a motion to approve the preliminary land development and requested waivers for 410 South High Street, conditioned upon the proposed loading zone on Dean Street to be approved by Borough Council and compliance with the recommendations set forth in the Westchester Planning Commission's letter. So anybody want to start with this one? I don't know if we want, Mr. Gill, do you want to? Yeah, understood. Do you have, is that a mic there? Can you use that? Is that okay? Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Is that working? Okay. So this is an application for preliminary land development approval that was filed by High Street 410 LLC. That's with regard to the property that we all know as the former Burger King site down on South High Street. between Dean Street and Price, and it has an address, not surprisingly, of 410 South High Street. It's tax parcel number 191030. The applicant has filed this application for preliminary land development approval to redevelop that site as a multifamily dwelling unit development. The applicant is represented by Brian Nagel of the law firm McElroy Harvey, who's with us this evening. The application was reviewed by the Borough Planning Commission in November, and the Borough Planning Commission issued a recommendation to Borough Council to approve the application. The application was then the subject of the Smart Growth Committee meeting last week, and Smart Growth, by a vote of 3-0, also recommended that Borough Council approve the application. We have prepared, in light of those two proceedings, we have prepared a draft resolution in which we recite all of the foregoing, all of the application materials that the applicant has submitted, the borough's consultants' reviews, which consist of the borough engineer's review, the borough planner's review, and the borough traffic engineer's review. And we have included in this draft resolution certain conditions, numbering 22 in number, which would include, compliance with those consultants' review letters to the satisfaction of the borough. The applicant is requesting 4 waivers, 2 from provisions of the Stormwater Management Ordinance and 2 from provisions of the Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance, and those are recited in the resolution as well. As I'm sure we will hear, is Mr. Stivell here? There he is. As I'm sure you will hear, there are a group of neighbors of the property who have concerns with regard to the project, and I would anticipate again that you will hear from their counsel, Lee Stivell, in just a moment. But without any further delay, I'll turn it over to applicant's counsel to make his presentation to Borough Council. And if you'll indulge me, I will just pass. I also would like a copy of the draft resolution. I have 3 more left.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about our project. My name is Pete Staz. I'm with Core Development, part of the development team that's working on this project. I just wanted to take a minute. I know this has been a 9-month process to get to this point. There's been a lot of discussion and back and forth, which I think has been productive. But I want to just take a quick minute to introduce ourselves. I'll take that minute. We are multifamily developers focused on town center infill and adaptive reuse and ground up. We're long-term holders of real estate, which I think is important. Because of that, we are vertically integrated. When we're developing a project, whether it's adaptive reuse or ground up, we think about things not to fill it up once and lease it. We think about it in 10-year or 20-year increments. And therefore, we want to be very close to our management company, all the pieces of development. That's incredibly important to us. So we're not just building this and leaving. We're going to be very involved. Next. There we go. Just to make mention of a recent project we finished, this is Cricket Flats in Ardmore. It's a 77 unit project, which was infill in Ardmore. It was recognized by Best in American as the Best in American Living Award from NAHB. We were also urged by Ernie McNeely and many of the folks in Lower Merion planning and staff to submit for the Montgomery County Awards, which we won the exceptional infill project and transit-oriented development concept. So that was a very an award which we are proud of and the Lower Merion is proud of. They use that. The Planning Commission of Montgomery County uses this project as the example of infill in Montgomery County. In their Planning Commission books that they pass to the different boroughs. I do not live in the borough, but I am local. I live near Downingtown. My daughter, I have 3 daughters. One works at Roots part-time. Another is involved with the YMCA. Another plays basketball at the Melton Center. So, and we have been involved with the Melton Center. And then we recently renovated this building. We bought it about a year ago. It's on 322 North Matlack. We walked through it once and fell in love with it. It's a 6-unit apartment building, was in dramatic need of updating and renovation. And I feel like it's now occupied. I think we did a nice job restoring the character of the building. It faces Marshall Park. It's such a beautiful building. And I think our residents love it. I'm going to just talk briefly about the project. I know there'll be a lot of discussion, but it is a 128 unit luxury apartment building. The best thing to compare it to would be, it's going to be like Chestnut Square. I mean, we think it'll be nicer, but it's that level of finish and on the interior and exterior. Our primary tenants in these buildings are millennials and baby boomers. And we see a really big growth in the empty nesters and retirees that want to live in these buildings. The building has 148 parking spots, 27, which are these, what we call bonus space. They're double stack parking spots. All the parking will be accessed through Price Street. That was a change we made. There's going to be parking access on Dean Street and on Price Street. And we heard from the Planning Commission, the residents, that they didn't want the access through Dean because it's a residential street. So we made that change. And then we also grew the space on Price Street, which is a public space on the corner of Price and High Street. So it's an outdoor public space that'll be hardscape landscaped. We believe that is going to be a gateway into the town center. So that's a very heavily trafficked pedestrian way. And we think that'll be a really nice amenity to the town center. We have voluntarily made substantial changes to the project through this 9-month process. And I will let Brian and the rest of the team talk about those. But there's a pretty big list of things that have been changed, not just with the access to Dean and removing the vehicular access off of Dean. So Tim, do you want to make a mention of the renderings? That wasn't really a question. Please.
Hi, Timothy Cassidy Bernardin. Timothy Cassidy Bernardin. Here we go. This is a view from the corner of High and Price. So this would be essentially on the north side of High Street, looking back toward looking back toward the site. And so you can see here, this would be a lower level entrance into the building here. This is the parking garage entrance that was just referenced a moment ago. I'm going to pick this thing up actually. This is parking garage entrance, and then you start working your way up the hillside here. There's about a 10-foot grade drop roughly between Dean Street and Price Street. So we take up that grade by having the building step at this point in the site here. So the main entrance will be up at Dean. Go look at that. This is the view for at the corner of Dean and High. So this will be the main entrance here, and then as I was explaining, the grade falls off gradually, but it's a long way. So again, it's about 10 feet overall, and so this will all be amenity area, starting in the corner here and heading down this way on this level, and then residential units up above. The parking is down below, all of this underground. And when we say amenity area, sometimes people are like, well, what's that mean? Amenity areas are the social or recreational service spaces within the building for the residents. So those are places where people might, be playing games. There's bicycle, workrooms. There's places for people to watch movies and hang out, fitness rooms and yoga studio and all those types of spaces. That's all part of the amenity area. So those types of uses will be occurring here. Originally, we had looked at this as being a retail area, but that was, well, let's just say after meeting with the Planning Commission a number of times, there were a lot of concerns about what that might mean in terms of traffic. And so we've rearranged the plan through the course of the process and transitioned the amenity space into that area instead of the retail uses. So that's the summary. Any questions? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Brian Nagel on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to reserve my time because I don't know what, every time I come to a meeting, I feel like there's something new that's been raised. We've addressed all of the issues. We've met all of the objective criteria of the borough's ordinance that applies to this project. As you know, this is a by right development project at this location in the town center zoning district. The issues that have been raised to date over the last 9 months with respect to your zoning ordinance have been addressed. Your consultants, your zoning officer, your solicitor have all signed off on where we ended up on those issues. And as was mentioned by Mr. Gill, we received a recommendation from the Planning Commission for approval of the preliminary land development application. We received a 3-0 recommendation from the Smart Growth Committee to this council for recommendation of the approval of the preliminary land development plan. And for those reasons, the application should be approved this evening. I won't comment on any other issues now. I'll reserve in case there's something I need to address, but you did receive a letter from, I think, some of the neighbors' council. Mr. Stavali's never identified who he represents, but I did submit a letter today, and that came yesterday. I submitted a letter today in response to that. I don't think I need to say anything else about that at this moment, but appreciate your consideration.
Mr. Nagel, if I may, you've had the opportunity to review the draft resolution that we prepared, correct?
Yes.
And if council is amenable to granting preliminary land development approval and the waivers that are identified as part of the application, does your client accept the conditions as prepared in this resolution?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gill, sorry, just put your mic down, but I have a question or two. So this is a by right usage, and you mentioned earlier, and I think it's part of this agreement, that we have had staff and council and consultants, engineers look at this, and they agree that it adheres to our zoning code.
That is correct. The protestants have raised a number of issues throughout the process, which again, I'm sure you'll hear about in just a moment. Those issues have been reviewed by the borough staff and by the borough's consultants, and it is the collective conclusion of staff and the consultants that the application complies with the objective criteria set forth in the borough's ordinances. There can be a different perspective between an applicant and protestants. That's not uncommon. But again, those issues have been reviewed, and it is the collective conclusion of your staff and your consultants that the application complies with the ordinances.
Thank you. Questions? Mr. Allen.
Yeah, I just have a couple questions about waivers 3 and 4, which are site triangle and site distance. So with number 4, in the code, the site distance is based on the speed limit of that road, which I believe is 25 miles per hour. So is this being reduced in this waiver? Is that being reduced from 175 feet to 160 feet? Is that correct?
Mr. Nagel, if you'd like to explain the basis of the waiver, and do we have the site plan? Is that?
The waiver listed in the resolution is on the screen right now, Mr. Phil.
Okay, would you like to explain the basis for the requested waiver? And yeah, perhaps Mr. Wishner can address that. And again, this has been previously reviewed by the borough's traffic consultant, who is here with us this evening, and Ms. Goff can add anything further that she wishes to add.
Good evening, John Witchner with McMahon, a Bowman company. The genesis of this waiver, because the configuration of Price Street and High Street is a T intersection where the driveway is located, you can't physically see. Price Street ends at High Street, so you can't physically, there is no fourth leg of this intersection, so you can't physically see any farther than that. Obviously, Price Street, I believe, is 25 miles per hour in this area. Anyone coming from approaching the driveway from the left, which is the driver's visibility looking left, those are all turning movements, either a left turn movement from High Street or a right turn movement from High Street, which are certainly being performed at speeds less than 25 miles per hour because it tended to be coming from a stop condition. So just from the physical aspect of the property and the fact that this is a T intersection makes this waiver relevant.
And then waiver number 3, my understanding of it seems like it's a little more drastic than 4. I wasn't too concerned about 175 going to 160, especially with the different type of intersection we have here. But if I'm reading the code correctly, we're going from the site triangle, which I would love to know what that means more concretely. But we're going from 75 feet down to, I believe, 46 and a half, if I'm not mistaken, for that waiver.
Yes, this deals with the site triangle, which when exiting a garage, obviously we need to set the garage back far enough off the property line to achieve a site triangle. The point of the site triangle is really looking left and right. It doesn't allow. It's not really related to site distance itself. In a traffic engineering world, we want to look at site distance, not site triangle. Site triangle is kind of an ordinance requirement, but that's why we want to get the 160 feet of site distance. The 46 feet, I believe, is kind of a mathematical calculation as you exit the driveway, but obviously a vehicle continues to inch up toward the edge of the driveway on Price Street and then can see that 160 feet. And that has been reviewed by borough consultants as well.
And is there any additional comment from any of our staff or consultants on that, or is that sufficient?
Hi, Kelly Goff with RVE. I'm the consultant for the borough traffic and parking. I agree with what the applicant's engineer has stated. I have no objection to the waiver of reducing from 175 to 160 feet, just as he explained that the intersection is 160 feet away. So that's the governing distance. And then I also have no objection to the waiver that they're requesting for the reduction of the site triangle distance, just because of the geometry and the building being right there. There's no need to have that 75-foot distance.
Okay, I appreciate that. And would it be appropriate to include this reasoning in this resolution? Just because I know there were issues potentially of like establishing a precedent that if Borough Council is used to granting these types of waivers, then developers in the future who are doing their due diligence and research about what they can expect to be able to build on these properties might expect Borough Council to grant a similar waiver, and maybe the situation would be different and you wouldn't agree that it makes sense in that scenario. Is that something that's done or we could do?
Yeah, I have no issue. I've seen the reason included in resolutions in other municipalities, and I see no issue with you guys including it for this waiver for that exact reason, setting a precedent.
I will Nick, also point out that those reason statements are in the review letters as well that are in the property file with this land development.
Okay, great. I just want to avoid a situation where a developer jumps in and thinks they're going to get X or Y, and then it doesn't happen, and it gets kind of spicy there.
We do reference both the application materials and the most recent versions of the consultant's review letters, which include the RVE, most recent RVE letter. So those are referenced. And again, as Ms. Goff pointed out, there's no reason not to include them in the text of the resolution if that's the desire of council.
Yeah, I feel like we could, but I feel like also if they're in those letters and the letters are record, then it's okay too. But either way it would work. I would be happy with it. Mr. Nagel.
And Mr. Allen, just so you're aware, there is already an established precedence in the borough for this waiver as it applies to parking garage buildings. That's been approved pretty much for every project that has a parking garage because of the way it lines up as the consultants were mentioning.
I will note that every land development, every land use application needs to be reviewed on its own merits. So this is not something that RVE is okay with, nor something that we included in draft resolution simply because it's the type of waiver that Borough Council has granted in the past. That would be an insufficient reason to grant any waiver. But again, the applicant has demonstrated the rationale for it. The borough's consultant has reviewed that rationale, and the two traffic engineers have reached a conclusion. We are loath to second guess that. And again, as long as the consultants that the borough relies upon, including staff, us, the engineer, the planner, traffic engineer, are okay, we're comfortable recommending that to you.
Other comments or questions from here? Mr.
Just one comment related to RV's letter. The ordinance or the resolution says that it's a November 2023 review letter. I mean, the last one I saw was 10/9, so I guess I'm missing one. I just want to make sure we have the correct date on that.
I believe there was one in November. I thought there was one in November.
Kelly Goff again. Oh yeah, my last review letter was dated November 20th.
Thanks. Don't have that one.
Questions, comments? Anybody up here? Okay. All right. I'll allow public comment. If anyone wishes to speak, come on up. Hold your comments at 3 minutes. It'd be great.
Appreciate a little more latitude than 3 minutes because they've had many witnesses and experts present tonight, and I represent.
How long do you think you'd need?
5 to 10 minutes.
I'll give you 5.
I represent approximately 63 homes in the neighborhood. Would some of you raise your hands in terms of folks that have interest here? My name is Lee Stivel, and I've done development along the 202 corridor, Delaware County, Chester County, Center County, Lancaster County, Cumberland County, residential, commercial. Invariably, every time you have a review and the project gets altered a little bit and a little bit more, it becomes a better project because you have a host of people sharing concepts, all for the benefit of health, safety, welfare. So when the applicant says, "Oh, we made these changes for the benefit of the community," no, the Planning Commission had sincere concerns. Sincere concerns that, number one, the project wasn't compliant with the zoning ordinance, and had sincere concerns about the compliance with regard to the subdivision land development ordinance. Now, the Planning Commission, after 9 months, issued a decision which raises those concerns, and we haven't heard anything different from the date of that vote. Number one, review the height calculations. Number two, review parking count and parking count methodology. Now, we submitted these concerns over a period of about 4 months. Unfortunately, my letter and concerns as they were addressed were never forwarded to your planning consultants. Mr. Gore elected not to send my letter to them. So the voice of the neighborhood was silenced for several months. So that's why you see a very late entry into this review by John Carollo, who is a traffic engineer. So I'd like to address 2 of the more important issues that confront this borough. Number one is parking. We suggest that the parking of less than 1 parking space per unit, 60% of the units are going to be 2-bedroom units. I don't even need a traffic engineering degree. I didn't have to go to Villanova to say that's insufficient. 60% of the units are 2-bedroom units, and there's less than 1 parking space per unit. Now, they have some non-compliant additional parking spaces that they can assign to 2-bedroom units, but less than 1 parking space. And the reason why they're suggesting less than 1 parking space is they want to save space for more productive rent-paying areas. Where should they be? There are 3 distinct levels of standards. And if you read John Carollo's report, based on setting location, they used the most lenient provision of the 3 settings. They are Center City Core. That's for Center City, Philadelphia, Center City, Baltimore, Center City, New York. It's an improper setting location. Dense multi-use, again, for a setting that's more urban, or general urban suburban. This is a situation where this property has. This property has no parking around its circumference. There's no relief valve. There's no real good provision for third-party deliveries, movings, move in and out. You have your UPS, your Federal Express, your Amazon deliveries. There's no adequate provision. There's no adequate provision for visitors. They're going to have a secure gate there with a code. What's that going to be like? Have you ever tried to go into a building as a pedestrian trying to open up and call someone and enter a code? Or we're going to have 2, 3, 4, 5 cars queued up asking people for codes. Can you imagine what Price Street is going to look like? So you have John Carollo indicating that the wrong location standard was used. And if the proper location standard was used, the number of spaces should be 1.4 to 1.7 parking spaces per dwelling unit. And that seems to be a fair number. This board, in considering what should actually happen here in terms of parking, in the event you should modify your resolution to say that we will adjust in the future, we will look at all the information for parking, and we will consider parking and we will set the standard going forward after final plan review, and it sounds likely approval. Because the standard right now is an inappropriate standard. You get 1 opportunity to have parking made correct. And if this board, if this council fails to get parking correct, where's the additional parking going to go? It's not going to go on Price Street. It's not going to go on High Street. It's not going to go on Dean Street around the immediate circumference. It's going to impact neighbors.
Can you conclude your comments, please?
If I could just handle the height limitation for a
You
minute.
do
or
it
so.
less than a minute, please.
We'll attempt that. Now, height has been an issue. And in my letter to you of December 18th, what that definition of height does, it says you look at the highest point. That's a singular. It's not points, it's point. And the reason why your ordinance is drafted this way, you don't want to artificially allow an increase in height in one area of the building, such as this building that has multi layers of roofs. You don't want to artificially increase this height by reducing this a little bit. So what happens is this ordinance says the highest point of the roof in case of a flat roof, that is in the one area that's highest. You correct that point and you measure the circumference around, even though this area may be reduced by a couple feet, because you don't want to artificially allow one part of the building to go up higher than 45 feet or 47 feet. It's an average. Now, the applicant says, oh, well, you're asking us to measure a height on the lower part.
Okay, you've reached your time. I've given you double the amount of time I would have usually allowed.
I appreciate that, but if we just have 10 more seconds.
Okay.
It should be the average height from finished grade to that highest point around the entire circumference of the building. What they're doing is they're artificially taking the height on the lower portion of the building to increase the height on the other portion of the building. It is fundamentally wrong. It is incorrect. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your consideration through tomorrow.
Mr. Stefano, if I can
Thank
make one comment in response to Mr. Stivel for Borough Council's information. He stated that I did not provide his letter to any of the consultants. That is incorrect. I did consult with our traffic engineer regarding the parking questions that were raised in his letter. The other items in the letter were zoning questions or concerns, which I reviewed and discussed with the borough solicitor.
Is it proper for your zoning officer not to extend my communications, my letters that raise planning issues, technical issues? Height should have gone to Pinoni, planning issues to Mr. Comita. There were Bill 2 issues, and parking going to your traffic consultant. He acted as the gatekeeper. My letter, my communications, my concerns of the neighbors never got to the consultants until I started directly communicating, as I did this past letter with this council. Unfair, uncalled for.
Thank you.
Not the way business should be handled.
Thank you. Other comments? Oh, yeah. Mr. Cook? Thought about it?
Good evening. My name is CJ Frederick. I live at 22 Dean Street. I'm an architect, landscape architect, and land planner. I've operated in Southeast Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and elsewhere, but primarily in those locations for the last 50 years. I say that not to impress you, but to put the caveat on my existence here tonight to say, I think it would be hypocritical of me, and I think I speak for the neighbors in the area, for us to think that this project should be stopped. Not the case. All we have ever asked is that this project be made to comply with your ordinances. And I hope that that's what council will eventually do. I also hope that you will pass motion and deal with the project going forward in a way that will stop the misrepresentations that exist and the falsehoods that have been put forth, and deal with it in the level of detail that is commensurate with the complexity of this project. I don't think that has been done. In my 50 years, I've never seen a project of this order of magnitude being imposed on a community receive the kind of treatment that this one has. I think there's way too much detail here. To give you an idea, the discussion of the ordinance provision for height comes up all the time. And I'm not going to bore you with what I have represented to the council, Smart Growth Group, and the Planning Commission as a methodology failure. But I'm going to tell you that information has never, ever been provided which allows you to verify the reporting that the applicant does. The applicant records a height of 43.5 feet from the first floor of the building. I believe Mr. Committa had in his letter a requirement to see a drawing so that we could say that 43.5 feet is correct. So the best that the borough could do with its consultants acting on its behalf is say, we accept what the applicant says. We really can't verify it, but we'll accept it. With regard to the parking, the RVE letter repeatedly has asked the question, what about the guests? Where are the guests going to park? Do the numbers that you've provided take into account the guests? Well, I don't know that the ITE...
Please conclude your comments now. Thank
I
you.
will. I don't know that the ITE specifically burrows into the topic such that it gives you definitive answers about things like that. But those are open-ended questions. And what I'll say to you in closing is, yes, Mr. Nagel submitted a letter today. I'm not even going to begin to attack it. But his letter can't exist if your Planning Commission's letter to you does. Planning Commission letter identifies many open-ended items that have not been addressed, and they're left open-ended. The conditions that they have offered to you are not finite in nature, and there's no way going forward for you to say that they're being met. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Other comments? Mr. Cook?
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. I'm a four-year graduate of High Street Elementary School. I'm curious about the grade coming out of the parking garage. Is it going to be an uphill, which I think is going to be significantly different than the exit that currently exists from the property?
I don't have the answer for that, but...
And when I'm coming out of a parking garage on an uphill grade, to me, the visibility is not as good. You need to be driving an SUV to be able to see the greatest distance. And I question the parking also. I've been to many meetings.
I think they probably have an answer for your grade question.
I've been to many meetings where we've heard about affordable housing. And some people like that. I've only heard luxury housing. So it's by right. If there were no questions, you'd have to approve it. But I think you've heard sufficient questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Do we have any chance we have an answer on the grade coming out of that? I don't.
3% grade down to price.
Going down. So it's a downward grade. He doesn't believe you, but I can tell it's Jason. Other comments? Questions? Okay.
I want to make sure I want to make sure I understand that. So a car coming out of the garage will come to Price Street, and let me put this in terms I can understand. The hood of that car will be pointing up on an up gradient or down on a down gradient. Down gradient coming into the intersection with Price Street.
Slight downgrade.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Is there any further comments? Okay. Any questions? Okay. Yeah, Mr. McCoy.
I know we heard from all of our consultants during the Smart Growth committee meeting. Mr. Kmeta, you were not there. Just wondering if you could weigh in on, what's been classified as open-ended comments that are, seem to be addressed by the resolution as conditions.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks, Patrick. Hi, Tom Kmita, Borough Planning Consultant since 1988. 2 points of order. One has to do with all of the items that are mentioned in the resolution, whether it's the consultant reviews or the planning commission's recommendations, what have you. Mr. Nagel had said, I was on the WebEx listening at the Smart Growth, but I had to drop off at 6:45 that evening. And so a question that I had was, if in the TCA review or any of the other reviews or the planning commission's requests for information, that information has not yet been shown, like the additional 5 feet of right-of-way that's described in the resolution and the corresponding shift in the location of the build-to line along Dean Street. Should Borough Council favorably act to approve the preliminary plan, then the question is, what will that plan look like? So would the plan memorializing that change be submitted to the borough within some reasonable time, 3 months, for example, that would show that condition? Now, just a couple of footnotes. On the building height, I had asked in the review of October 18th, updated November 30th, to simply provide a vertical section that would confirm the information that was submitted more as a statistical abstract measurement. And the applicant said they would submit that. They asked for details on the 2,910-foot plaza. Applicant said, I'll submit it. Brick details, I'll submit it. The spot elevations along Price Street, I'll submit it. And the question is, well, when will they submit that? So I suppose the borough's not at risk, because if they made a mistake or they submit it later and it's wrong, or we find out later that the building is taller than 45 feet, you can always deny the final plan. So I just wanted to ask Mr. Gill, if you'll allow me. Mr. Gill, if the applicant said the letter's clean, but the information that they said will comply or will submit that later is submitted, and we later find out that there's a problem, would that rise to the level that the Borough Council could use that as a basis to deny the final plan?
Yes, so the resolution contains language that says that the application shall be in strict compliance with the materials that the applicant has submitted. The application, as defined, that's the application materials. It also requires that the applicant comply with any outstanding comments in the various borough consultants' review letters, quote, to the satisfaction of the borough. It is not uncommon that a municipality, before acting on a preliminary land development plan, would require the applicant to revise the plans to demonstrate compliance. So to show that additional right-of-way on Dean Street, or to show the build-to line being complied with on a plan. It is also not uncommon for a municipality to say, well, we're going to approve this conditioned upon you showing that on your future plan submission, your final land development plan submission. I don't think that the applicant would, I don't know, but I don't think that the applicant would submit an interim set of plans to say, we're complying, we're complying with your conditions of preliminary land development approval until they submit their final land development application. And I would expect that these changes would be reflected on the final land development plans. Again, that is incorporated, we think, in this language to comply to the borough's satisfaction with the various consultants' review letters. But I have no problem whatsoever making it an express requirement saying expressly including but not limited to showing the build to line or showing the additional right-of-way dedication. It's really an either or. Borough Council can, hang on, Mr. Nagel. Borough Council can require the plan to be revised presently before you grant preliminary land development approval, or you can make it a condition that the final land development plans need to show that compliance.
Let me just weigh in here real quick. They have submitted a revised sheet showing those two items, the additional right of way and the required setback along Dean Street. We do have that sheet. Those are zoning items that were reviewed on the revised sheet, and they are compliant
Kevin,
with what they discussed at the planning commission meeting.
I'm sorry, Kevin, or Brian, do we have the exact plan reference for that plan sheet? If so, let's reference that expressly in the resolution. Okay, thank you. Then in that case, it sounds like the applicant has demonstrated that compliance and we'll reference that expressly in the resolution.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Was there another public comment? I feel like there was somebody. Oh,
Is that this sheet here?
Jeff Allen,
I just see
417
it
South
nothing
Church. I'm a member of the group that live in the immediate proximity of this development. And I guess what I'd like to say is, number one, our intention was never to stop or attempt to stop development. It was to evaluate the impact that it's going to have on where we live. And this is a significant project. And I guess what I would ask of you is, since seeing a rendering of this project, how many of you have actually visited the site? Okay, good. So just as an example, all the delivery, if you look at Dean Street, which is a street that already has problems, and we're now going to be adding 128 plus units. What comes to mind for me is Amazon, Grubhub. The list is endless, right? How is that street going to handle the volume of those delivery vehicles? Did anybody just envision that? There's no pull off. How is that going to be dealt with? The parking situation is been brought up, and I won't spend a lot of time on it because it's already been brought up. But there's reality, and the reality is that overflow parking, i.e. visitors, will be parking all along Church Street, all around our place. There'll be nowhere left for us to park. I think it's important for people to like visualize what's going to happen when something of this scale gets allowed. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Come on.
Hi, my name's Lisa Krauss. I live at 25 Dean Street. So I watch the traffic all the time because I work at my window. We have a traffic jam every day with Cisco trucks trying to deliver food to Amore Pizza and High Street Cafe. And sometimes there are too many of them to actually deliver. When you get to the end of Dean Street, you actually can't see around the trucks to make the turns. So this will just make it even more fun. But the parking is a concern. But I think what I want to say is that the developers have had all kinds of time to explain to you what they're going to do because they need to in that planning. But the fact that our representatives of 60 residents was given 5 minutes to go over a letter that we prepared tells me that this council doesn't really care about what the residents think and doesn't want to hear it. And so that's a shame because we pay taxes and we own our property. And eventually, if our residences lose their property value, you'll have a lot of renters and no property taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ooh, okay. All right. If there's no other comment, Mr. Nagel, do you have something in conclusion?
Yes, please. I just want to clarify a few things. I'll be brief that were mentioned. First of all, there is a pull off. That's not a true statement. There's a loading space on the side of the building, including a loading space that was installed to solve a problem on Dean Street, which is that the Cisco truck would park there and block the street. So we added that loading space so that we could get that Cisco truck off the street and traffic related to this development. It was stated by the council that for the neighbors that there's 60% two bedrooms units. That's incorrect. It's 40% two bedrooms. It was suggested that the parking's been minimized to the ordinance. That's not true. There's a requisite number of parking spaces plus 27 bonus spaces, and that's specifically because my client, as a builder and operator of this building, is concerned about that issue. It's important to be able to utilize the building properly and serve their customers, which are their tenants, with the proper amount of parking. So they've worked very hard to make sure that they have that for this project. We have submitted the information to verify height calculation. There's plans and Excel spreadsheet calculations showing that. And look, and obviously the borough zoning officer and the borough solicitor have signed off on the methodology of the height calculation that's been provided and that's being approved. We understand that the project has an impact on the neighborhood. It's a by right use. We get that. But that's why we spent so much time with the planning commission. That's why there were many voluntary revisions made to the plan. And I do believe it's reached to the point where it's at its right moment. It is the right plan for the site. It's time for a preliminary approval. There are some details that will be submitted in the final land development plans to address, will comply items in the consultant review letters. And I appreciate your consideration.
Thanks, Mr. Neal.
If I can just
Mr.
perhaps
Scott?
wrap this up. At the end of the day, you've been presented with an application for preliminary land development approval. The neighbors have presented questions with regard to the building height and the interpretation of the ordinance requirements and the calculation of that in accordance with that interpretation. They've presented questions with regard to the build to line and whether or not the applicant is correctly establishing that in accordance with the ordinance. And they've presented questions with regard to the parking and whether or not the applicant is complying with the criteria that are in the ordinance for parking. Again, the best that Borough Council or any municipal governing body can do is to review the application as submitted by the applicant, review the application materials for the borough's consultants and staff to weigh in on those and to make recommendations to you as the governing body. If the neighbors are dissatisfied with any resolution that Borough Council may approve, or if the applicant is dissatisfied with any resolution that the Borough Council may approve, they have recourse for that. But again, the best that you can do, as any governing body can do, is to review the materials that are submitted to you, to rely upon your consultants, and to reach an appropriate conclusion.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just state that I have heard the concerns. These haven't fallen on deaf ears. I've read the letters. I've gotten several letters from legal counsel from the residents, and I've read them. I've looked at them. I've listened to our legal counsel, and I've listened to our staff and consultants. So I hear you. I promise I hear you. Any other comments? Mr. Allen?
Really, really brief with this, but something I've been thinking a lot about the past couple months, actually the past year. Quick question about when we updated our zoning, was that 2-3 years ago? Could we have made decisions when we were doing that zoning update that would have impacted the reality of this project?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so we could, in the past, have made decisions that would make this project probably a lot better for the residents from their point of view. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I mean, you don't know that this project's coming in when we're doing that zoning rewrite,
Totally.
And I think something that I've heard on, this is my last week of my term. So something that I've heard a lot in my term is this idea that Westchester is already fully developed. I hear that all the time when we talk about making zoning changes, and then these kinds of projects come up. And unfortunately, we're in this situation where I feel like we're having two different conversations about what we'd like to see in zoning versus are we complying with what's currently on the books. So when I've been thinking a lot about the past 4 years, this is definitely my biggest regret on council is not like, I think we could have done more with the last zoning update to make projects like this better for the community. So I would just say, because you're all very motivated, which is great, maybe when we do a zoning update again, we can start looking at this stuff. And when people say that things are already, because that was the line that I feel like I was given a lot, was that Westchester is basically fully developed. Like, what are we doing here? I don't think I heard that from staff, just to be clear, but I had heard that before. So when it comes time to make these rules, I think these meetings can go a lot better in the future, and we can kind of control our own destiny a little bit at those meetings. And unfortunately, at this meeting, it just seems like it's a little bit too late. And the best we can do is make sure we're complying. So.
Understood. Okay. If there's no further questions or comments, then are we good to put this on consent for tomorrow, or does anybody want on discussion? Consent. Okay. All right. Item 20 will go under consent for tomorrow night. Thank you, everyone.
We'll do is we'll revise this resolution, reflect the comments and discussion this evening, and we'll reissue another record.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. All right. Moving back to item number 8, which is under our ACT committee. It's a motion to approve our 2024 Borough Council and Boards, Commissions, Committee meetings schedule. I'm assuming that they're all pretty much the same as the previous year, just updated with new dates for the next year, right? Correct. Okay. Any questions or concerns with that? We put that under consent? Yeah. Okay. All right. Item 8 will go under consent. Item 9 is under our Public Works. It's a discussion of our special event fees. I think we talked about this for a month or so. Anything new? Mr. Krowski, yes.
Keith Karowski, Director of Parks and Rec Department. Unfortunately, due to my illness last week, I wasn't able to present to the committee level. So we talked it over. We thought this would be best to go through committee before council. So we'd like to bring it back in February after the reorg next month. Just, it really should go through that channel first before reaching council.
Understood. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, we'll just withdraw it from the agenda, not tabled, but just withdraw. Yeah. Okay. So item 9 is withdrawn from the agenda. So, okay. Item 10 is a motion to approve the 2024 shade tree planting bid with DECS. Any information we need added to that, Mr. McCoy? Anything about that we need to?
No. These are Mr. Edwards. I don't know if you want to comment on any of these, but most of them are pretty straightforward annual contracts for maintenance and planning, et cetera.
Okay. Any comments or questions about this from anybody? Okay. Item 10 will go under consent. Item 11 is a motion to approve our 2024 shade tree maintenance bid with Horgan Tree Experts. Once again, I'm assuming it's just a update on the bid for this, and yes, okay, it's contract.
Yeah, all of the 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and and 15 are all annual maintenance contracts.
Okay, we'll just go through each one, and if anybody has a question about each one, let me know, or a comment. So if you don't have one for 11, we'll put that under consent then. Okay, item 12 is a motion to approve a 2024 rain garden maintenance bid with Archwild or Arcawild, or I don't know how you say that, but once again, routine. Any questions or comments with this discussion? Okay, no, that'll go under consent. Item 13 is a motion to approve the 2024 traffic signal maintenance bid with our signal service. If there's no questions or comments, we can put this on consent. Okay. 14 is a motion to approve the 2024 to 2026 contract with Howe Associates for Act 101 reporting and 904 grant submission. Seeing no concerns from anybody, so we'll keep rolling right along here. That'll go under consent. Item 15 is a motion to adopt the resolution to approve the traffic signal maintenance agreement with PennDOT. Looking up for any issues. I'm not seeing any. Consent on that as well. Item 16 is a motion to adopt the resolution to approve the PennDOT winter agreement with the Borough of Westchester. Yep, any issues with that one either? All pretty routine. Okay, so 16 is under consent as well. Okay, moving on to our Public Safety Committee. Motion to approve a resolution regarding the location of school bus stops. This was something I brought up a few months ago. Any issues with this? Huh? No? Okay, good, great.
Thank you.
We'll see if it does anything, but yes, you're welcome. Yeah. So, okay, great. 18 is under smart growth. 18 is a motion to authorize solicitor attendance in opposition of zoning hearing board appeal number 1007-255 at Dean Street. Oh, I'm sorry, number 1007-255 Dean Street. Applicant seeks a variance from section 112-307.b of the Westchester zoning code to allow a reduction in the median lot size per dwelling unit to allow for 2 dwelling units in section 112-603A, seeking relief from minimum off-street parking requirements. So your smart growth has said that we would like to send a solicitor, correct? Yes, I think I agree with that as well. Anybody have any issues with that? Okay, that will go under consent. That's item 18. 19 is a motion to schedule a public hearing on February 21st, 2024 to amend Chapter 97 and Chapter 112 related to electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging stations. That date works for me. Any issues or? Okay, consent on that too. Okay, 20 we already did. 21 is a motion to approve our November 2023 HARB certificates of appropriateness. There is letters A, B, C, and D. I'm seeing that the committee did recommend a 3-0 to deny the first A at 119 North High Street, Meridia Holdings LLC. Do you want to talk about that, Mr. McGinnis?
Yes, I'll be brief about that. That applicant came for the previous work session meeting, if you remember, and it was tabled. Essentially, from there, Carol Quigley from the HARB presented the case as why they denied it, and we approved that denial.
Okay. And then B, C, and D look like they are all approved with some stipulations on each of those.
Correct.
Great. All right. Is for number A, is everybody in agreement that that should be not approved? Okay. So what I'll say is that 21 A, B, C, and D can go to the consent agenda, but A is for not approval. Is that the way I should word it? Did I say that right? Does that sound right? Or should we just leave it off?
That's a great question. I mean, the recommendation was for denial. So I think it's still going to go to the consent agenda for denial.
Understood. Okay.
Along with the other 2 for approval.
Okay. So then 21 A, B, C, and D will all go to consent agenda as presented.
It's approved.
Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. Any questions or comments on that? I don't see any from the public. Okay. 22, Finance Committee. A motion to adopt a resolution to approve the intermunicipal fire services agreement. This we talked about a little bit last month as well. Any further updates from anybody on this? This was 3-0 from the committee. So, okay. Any comments? Don't see any. All right. 22 will go under consent. 23 is a motion to approve the following purchasing approvals. We have 1, approve $11,200 to Plate Logic. 2, approve $24,200 to USALCO. 3, approve $11,700 to Muni Billing. 4, approve $453,073.50 to Premier Concrete. 5, approve $17,500 to Arch Wild. And 6, approve $66,059.80 to Paylocity. Number 4, is that just from some paving? Is that a specific project or spot in the borough? It's quite a
Yeah,
chunk of change.
that's for the High Street and Minor project
Oh,
that was
okay,
awarded
yes.
by council. This is the purchasing approval to pay that vendor. Project will begin in January, first week of January.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Any issues with any of these purchasing approvals? Comments? Okay. So item 29, 1 through 6 will all be on consent. 24, motion to approve final payment of $34,504.53 for Downingtown Pike Bradford Plaza grant-funded automatic red light enforcement, ARPA and East Bradford Township Joint Project. This was Committee 3.0 as well. I remember this project. It sounds good to me. Any comments or anybody? Seeing none. All right, 24 is consent. 25 is a motion to approve the SBCA service agreement with clarification of monthly billing practice. This was 2-1. Dissent was?
Mr. Flynn, and I'd like to have a little discussion tomorrow night because I don't see a up-to-date contract that Mr. Metric was supposed to do with the SPCA with the wording and approval from Mr. Lamb from the SPCA. We take the wording out of monthly charges per pet.
Charges per pet. Okay.
Yeah, the wording was for every dog was $400 monthly. For every cat, it was $200 monthly. And the SPCA verbally agreed to take that out of the contract, but Mr. Metric was supposed to follow up with a fresh contract from the SPCA.
So what they're saying is $400 monthly to hold the dog?
To hold the dog and cat, yeah. That's what it says on the contract.
But that's not what they're actually billing.
That's not what they say they're going to do.
I understand.
But if it's in writing, it's a contract.
Sure.
So, Mr. Allen, all of a sudden I forgot him. He was not even here yet. Mr. Allen mentioned that Mr. Metric was going to clean that verbiage up with Mr. Lamb and present it to us. So hopefully we can have that tomorrow.
Understood. Is that Mr. Metric?
So, thank you. I did have that conversation with Mr. Lamb on the phone, and he said simply you could write it in here, initial it, and sign it, and send it back. So I proposed the following sentence to replace section number 2. In the second paragraph where it talks about billing for animal acquisition and housing stray animals on a monthly basis, shall read, billing for animal acquisition and housing stray animals from Westchester Borough will be calculated monthly with a one-time fee, that's the new word, of $400 per newly acquired dog and $200 per newly acquired cat or other non-dog domesticated species. Documentation will accompany billing.
Does that work, Mr. Flynn?
Sure. Because I'm not going to get anything better than what he's going to do.
Yeah, understood. Okay, so we can put that on a consent with that language.
With that language?
Okay.
Yeah.
Comments on that from anyone? Okay, so 25 with that, those changes that Mr. Metric just mentioned is under consent. 26 is a motion to approve a reallocation of ARPA funds in the amount of $27,000 for the 401 East Geisha Municipal Roof Replacement Project. This was Committee 3.0 as well. Any further comment or discussion on this? Comments or? Okay, that'd be consent as well. All right, 27, we are under other business. A is a motion to approve the November 14th and 15th, 2023 Borough Council meeting minutes. Any issues with the minutes?
No.
Okay, that'll go under consent. B is consider amendment to UMC lease lot number 5. Ms. Reiner, do you have just what the changes were?
Can you hear me now? Oh, geez. Okay. The only revision to this lease is the church was uncomfortable with the hold harmless that was included, which was just something boilerplate. The solicitor agreed that it was fine to remove because we are covered under our insurance, and that it was no harm to remove that. So that is the only modification. There's no change to the terms otherwise in this lease agreement.
Now, can you just give me the timeline here? That the lease has not been ratified by both sides yet, you're telling me?
Right. We sent it to the church. The church was uncomfortable with that.
This is just But once we do, we've already approved it with everything else. Now we're just approving this.
Right, the start date would be February 1st. They had asked us to wait till their Martin Luther King Community Service Day.
All right. Are we okay with that change? Yeah. Okay. That's the last one, right? Last change?
Yes, we did.
This time, that's it.
Yes, we did send a notice of a 60-day extinguish of the existing lease just to cover our bases here.
Okay. Fine. Yeah.
President, Ms. Reiner, since we're agreeing to change the no harm, no foul rule, how long are we going to allow the church to sign it and get it back to us?
Hopefully they'll return it immediately. I did send it over to them to review as soon as I modified it and sent it as an amendment to the agenda, but
Mr. Flynn, are you suggesting that we give them a time limit?
Yes, Ms. Dorsey, because we've been dancing since I've worn out my shoes since August, and we've been dancing with this thing. And I would say we would give them, 5 to 7 days to get it back to us.
Like by the end of the year?
Yeah.
Does that work?
5 to 7 days, yeah. Yeah, that way there we have a clean bill going into the new year. Yeah.
Okay.
You agree, Ms. Dorsey?
100%.
Thank you.
Can we add that then? So this will we'll amend that the lease to what Ms. Reiner mentioned, and then we'll also mention that we're voting that we're requiring them to sign this lease by the end of the year.
Sure.
December 31st, whatever. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thanks.
All right, great. So that'll go under consent. So is there any comment on C? Okay. C is announce the purpose of the December 11th, 2023 executive sessions. We met in executive session previously and after the budget adoption, previously to discuss the police contract, and we met with legal counsel for about land development. Okay. Any other business? Mr. Cook?
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. I'd like to know what the stream protection fee tax legal fees are planned for next year, $60,000.
I'm sorry, wait, can you repeat the question? You want to know what the stream protection fees, what?
Legal fees of $60,000 are planned for next year.
Oh, like that's in the budget, you're saying? That we're budgeting for next year? Okay.
Harold, did you send me an email about this today? Did you send me an email about this today? Now I know what your inbox is. I didn't know what it was. 60,000 will cover all legal expenses associated with stream protection. We do expect to incur some costs with the Supreme Court case next year. And also in the event of anything else that comes up, legal expenses are one of the hardest things to predict in a budget.
Will council be required to vote in public session on these matters?
On what?
Spending legal fees.
We did. It was the budget meeting. We approved that in our budget as a line item.
So you can spend $60,000 anyway on legal fees without letting the public know with a public vote.
I mean,
That's what we did was we put that as a placeholder of $60,000 for legal fees, anticipating the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania going for oral argument. Plus, we have other things when we go in to do sustainability things. We have to pay the lawyers to make sure that the documents are correct. So we have a $60,000 Mendoza line for legal fees for stream protection. And it's in the budget and it's already been approved.
Will it be voted on in public session to expend those funds?
If anything's over, if any one bill is over $10,000, yes.
Yeah, that's part of our ordinance. We have to vote on. That's why you saw that one item on here today about all the.
Yeah, we have a purchasing management agreement. Anything over $10,000, anything over $2,500, they have to get a PO.
Purchasing approvals.
Yeah.
I'm curious when the $27,000 we spent this year was approved in public meeting. Prior to the fact that we were billed.
I don't know. Any other business? This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.